I've asked Kobe this. I've asked Shaq this question on this topic. You can't vote for yourself, right? When it's like, hey, put a starting five together. Can I include myself? No. You can't count yourself. I don't know if you can answer this question or not. Out of all the people, Rob, can you pull up the Vegas odds that Adam invented? Can you pull that up? The one,
that's it.
The Vegas odds, because this is a qualifier now. Do you know which one I'm talking about? Is this the one, Adam, or there's a better
odds
one?
Check
but this is fine.
This is fun.
So you got Tim Scott, Doug Burgum, Tulsi Gabbard, Elisa Stefanik, Rubio, Carson, Vivek, Haley, DeSantis, Huckabee, Noam. Out of those, who do you think would be if President Trump is asking a question saying, give me counsel, who do you think would be a good VP selection? What would you say?
Look, I mean, in fairness, I'm not going to be with Trump for much of the rest of this week, right? And so I'm not going to publicly air what my private counsel is to him, just as somebody who's asking me for actual advice. I'm not. So
maybe not Trump asking. Maybe I'm asking you. Like, I'm going to Vegas. I'm saying, hey, Vivek, who would be a good person to bet on if I'm going to Vegas tomorrow?
I'll say a few good things about a couple of people on this list, right? Somebody I got to know pretty recently is Ben Carson. He is somebody who, so he came to Columbus, Ohio. It's my hometown. I met him for the first time there. We've done podcasts and everything together.
Right.
But I will tell you that he is somebody who, my wife, she's a physician. She is a throat surgeon. When she was in undergrad, there was somebody who visited her when she was at Yale and gave an inspiring talk to a small group on why he became a surgeon. That man was Ben Carson.
Get out of here.
Right. So, I mean, my wife, she's excellent at what she does. She's one of, I can only imagine how many people that man's actually given inspiration to. And the funny thing is, he wasn't supposed to be a good student, right? He was a guy who never victimized himself based on his skin color, but he wasn't the best in his class, he told me, for a while, until he actually studied and got the heck ahead. And so I like that spirit, and I like the fact that there's a role for everybody. Would I have voted for Ben Carson over Donald Trump in a presidential primary when they ran against each other? No, that's a different story. But do I believe that he is somebody whose heart is in the right place and who has learned a lot and has a level of wisdom and could actually provide a level of counsel to somebody in an executive position? Absolutely, I do. And has he given inspiration to a lot of people, including my wife, including to me? I think I would say that about him. Right now, who's going to be the best vice president? There's some other people on that list too. I hadn't seen that list, by the way, so it's interesting that you brought it up. I think that's up to each chief executive to decide. You don't say, okay, who's the CEO going to hire in a role, and then somebody armchair quarterbacking that decision. So I've got good things to say about a number of people on this list, but I just picked Ben because I met him recently, and he's a truly good-hearted man who loves this country and I think is different. I also have a love of outsiders. I don't like people who grew up I don't like when people who grew up in politics remain in that festering swamp of politics. So I think it's good when you got somebody who's been a surgeon or somebody who's been a businessman coming in from the outside to shake things up.
What do you think about Tulsi?
Look, I like Tulsi because she's an independent thinker, actually. She's somebody who, I'll tell you a funny story about Tulsi. We were at a dinner recently. I hope all these people don't mind me just sharing these stories, but whatever, it's kind of fun. We were at a Mexican restaurant in Texas, and the funny thing about Tulsi is, so I'm usually in this position, okay, where we go to a Mexican restaurant. I told you I didn't kill the dog, you asked me, but I'm vegetarian, right? So we've done this when you and I have had lunch together, right? So somebody will come by, and I was like, oh, is this thing vegetarian? Is this thing vegetarian? It kind of holds up the whole table. It's a little bit inconvenient, but whatever. I'm raised that way. It's part of my conviction, and so I do it anyway. This time we're going around the table and we're at a Mexican restaurant and there's all the usual questions. Oh, is your rice vegetarian? Is your beans vegetarian? I'm not the one asking the questions. It's Tulsi Gabbard. And so I got to just say, okay, good. She did all the hard work. I just said, I'm just going to have what she's having.
Yeah. That's cool.
Which is funny, but I respected that because it still showed somebody who, say what you will about the conviction, at least has some conviction. I also love the fact that she has been outspoken against a lot of the foreign intervention that hasn't best served this country. And I think that she is, in her heart, as best I can tell, somebody who is against unnecessary war. I share that in common. I think Donald Trump shares that in common. I think it's a beautiful thing that we could use more of in both parties, frankly. And so, I've got positive things to say about a lot of people on that list. In terms of who's, as a vice president role, that's a decision that one man gets to make, and that's the person who's the president, which is hopefully Donald Trump.
Let me ask you a question though. So with the AND culture and and the position that you said about the MAGAs and the people, the 7%, low percent, how much if Trump picks Vivek to be the vice president, how much does that help him for the 2028 election? Like, where does that crowd go, oh, if he's bringing him as vice president, then we're 100% going all in instead of the and that's it. Like, I'm just curious, how much you think that shifts if Trump actually puts him as vice president and Vivek becomes the vice president, and for 4 years they see these two just go after the deep state, go after everybody, flip everybody off, and like, this is America first. What's up? How much do those people say, you know what? I don't care. He could be from anywhere. We're going for him.
Tom, what do you think?
This is fascinating to me. I'm watching the analysts here.
Yeah.
I'd love to see him pick you for all the reasons that I think I articulated once before. And this is sincere. That is a qualified list there. Tulsi's been on the podcast. We've talked to her. We know some of these people, and so we've been able to do a little bit more than just a inspection. Well, watching them on TV, we've met them, and you know what? You are articulate. You are stick smart. I would love to see. My personal hope and dream was that if you weren't VP, you'd be AG, because I think an attorney general that just would cut through it would be strong. But I think you would absolutely be a benefit to the country because you're no BS. And you're really smart, and you're driven on it. And that's what I think. And I think right now America's just kind of playing a parlor game of who's going to be where. And Trump's hopefully taking really great counsel from really great people. And I'm glad you'll be with him this week.
But how much do you think helps?
Don't play diplomatic, Tom.
Yeah, I'm saying how much
answer,
how much of that percentage that they said, like 7% or whatever, how much do you think that shifts? And they just say, listen, Trump has him as VP. Once Trump is done, everybody's going to Vivek. How much do you think that percentage goes of his chances to be the president?
Oh, I think it goes a lot. I think it move it as much as 50%, because I think any rational person has to look at both men that are currently the presumptive candidates and say the VP this time is very important on an actuarial basis.
Yeah. Well, Vivek, just to cut through the clutter here, the VP pick will be the next leading candidate for the presidency in 2028. Just to cut through that. But on this topic,
I don't think so.
I'm just in a camp where I respect the people who have a lot of conviction about telling something in the future. I'm actually, one of the things I found is I'm very good at understanding what my convictions are in the present. I'm not particularly good at predicting one-off facts in the future, right? So I stick to the business that I'm best at, which is identifying my own convictions and following them. But I'm finding the conversation fascinating.
But on this list, you've shared the stage with many people on this list. I know you're a vegetarian, Vivek, but there's only one person you had full-on beef with, and that is Nikki Haley.
Yeah,
you see her odds here. Thoughts on Nikki?
I like what
thoughts
you did
on her as a VP, and was that beef actual? Because she at one point it got personal. What was that experience?
Yeah, I think it was interesting. I don't think I've talked about this one before either. My first time meeting Nikki Haley was actually her reaching out to me proactively when very few people in this country know who I was, to set up a call with me. I was just rolling out my book Woke Inc., and I got to give her some credit. I mean, my understanding is apparently, I only know the excerpts that have come out from Kristi Noem's book, but apparently she reached out to Kristi Noem too. This is somebody who has been for a long time identifying who are going to be the potential players in the future. This is long before I thought of myself as even a player in politics. And so she set up a half-hour Zoom call, congratulated me on what a good job I was doing. I said, this is interesting. I wonder what's going on there. So I think that I always had I will tell you, it left me a little skeptical, actually, was the response that I had. Because I was so flat, a lot of things that were said to flatter me. Someone proactively reached out to have a conversation. I'm a guy who not many people have heard of. I said, what was the objective there? Right? I was a little bit cynical. And I think that one of the things I learned is, this isn't specific to her, but I'm basically the opposite of what I've observed many professional politicians to be, right? Many professional politicians are all about trying to figure out what you want to hear and then telling you more of that. And I'm in the business of identifying what my own convictions are. As human beings, have some of those changed? Or everything you believe 10 years ago the same as you believe today? No. But what are my convictions? What are my most deeply held convictions today, and how do I stand for them? And so when I look at people who have grown up in that sport of professional politics and then embrace policies that sometimes align with their own self-interest but at the expense of the country, yeah, that really does get under my skin. And so, I think a lot of the divide that you saw between me and Nikki on the debate stage was grounded in deep-seated policy differences, deep-seated differences in what a politician and a public figure and a leader of a country is supposed to be. Is it somebody who has very carefully crafted and planned what they're supposed to say and then carefully rolls that out through careful rigors of poll testing and consultant vetting? Or is it somebody who's sharing their honest convictions? Is it somebody who believes the sole role of a public servant is to serve the public, or that it's okay to serve yourself along the way? Those are fundamental ideological divides, and I think that's what you saw spilling over there a little bit.
You also saw, I think, a little bit of the chess game of candidates during the primaries, right?
Yeah.
You make alliances and you go after people that are perceptibly starting to roll up in the polls. And she and Chris Christie did that. So there was also a little of that going on, right?
Yeah, we were watching it during the break, them talking to each other. Yeah, and by the way, what do you think DeSantis stands now? Now that everything is over with, and in the breaks I would watch, you always go to him to speak with them.
I think we were standing by each other most of the time. That was sort of the...
But it was always you trying to find a way to engage him.
Yeah.
He wouldn't really engage.
Yeah, but I think there's one or two instances. I think there was... I mean, I try to be polite, right? I think he was saying something like MNRA vaccine, and I just wanted to be respectful. I don't want to call him out on stage for it, but it's... You know, I told him it's
MRA.
Yeah, I mean, just small stuff, right? It's friendly, friendly little tip here and there. I remember that was one of the instances where...
Are you guys good? Do you guys communicate or not at all?
I don't think we've communicated since the campaign. I saw him at NASCAR. I remember that. I went to Daytona 500. We were both in the pregame routine they had. Maybe I've seen him once or twice, but I think I've got no particular beef with Ron. I think that
no relationship either. Like you guys haven't broke bread, had dinner.
We don't. There's other people I'm on a text message relationship with.
Nothing. But not him.
We never exchange numbers. But I will say that backstage it was always relatively
cordial,
courteous.
respectful.
It was relatively courteous. They got kids the same age. I think Apoorva and Casey sat next to each other at some of the debates, and so we've got no beef there.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.